Here comes Mitchell. Go Bear! Utah takes the lead.
All right, hello everyone, and welcome back to Basketball in the Mountains. This is episode 23. I am your host, as always, Tyler King, and we are back talking about the Utah Jazz today because it is NBA draft season is well underway. We are into June. The finals start tonight. Obviously, none of the teams in the Mountain Time Zone are involved, so we won't be talking about that. And I don't think it's going to be that competitive of a series, even if the clash of styles might make a couple of the games pretty fun. But we are here to talk about who the Jazz could target at number 5 today, and it'll be the official. I'll give at the end my official big board 1 through 30 for this NBA draft. I have had a lot of fun watching the tape over the last couple weeks, really diving in on a lot of these prospects, especially the guys in that 3 to even 15 range. We're going to talk about a lot of guys today that the Jazz could consider at number 5. Some that don't really feel likely at all, but just guys that are worth talking about as well, because there are a lot of a big range of possibilities for what the Jazz could do, especially considering the big news of the week with them hiring Austin Ainge away from the Celtics. He was an assistant GM there, obviously Danny Ainge's son. He is the new president of basketball operations. Danny Ainge has been the CEO of basketball operations for the Jazz since he came on board a couple years ago. The first kind of title I've ever seen of that regard. They've had Justin Zanuck in place as the GM, but now Justin Zanuck will report to Austin Ainge, and by all accounts, it's Austin who is running the show now in Utah, which sets up an interesting draft for them too, because he's getting involved now kind of late in the process. We'll see how much say he has in who they take at 5 and just kind of all the trades they're going to be doing, because by all the quotes I read and the reporting from the press conference earlier this week, it seems like they're not interested in tanking again next season. Now, they could say that right now, and as they're trying to say all the right things, because they don't want to put the fans through that again. But with them falling from 1 all the way to 5 in the lottery, it kind of felt like they were setting up to be another a bad team again next season. And who knows, even a 6-7 win improvement could keep them in the bottom 4 and have them in contention to get any of the top 3 guys. It feels like is looking like the case for that 2026 draft. But we're going to spend most of the day talking about the guys they could take this year at number 5. And we have one of our most frequent guests today, a guy who I've said many times I really, really enjoy talking hoops with, and a guy who his opinion I really, really respect on the player evaluation side, and that is my guy, Troy Finnegan from ClutchPoints. Troy, thanks for coming back on here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Looking forward to it. One of my favorite. We've been talking about doing the show for months and months. So
yeah.
I'm excited about it.
Yeah, one of the big reasons I wanted to start the show was to talk about all the guys that, obviously we both watch college and NBA hoops more than really anything else. So to kind of mesh the two has always been a big thing of mine. I think maybe the 2011 Kyrie draft was the first draft I really, really got into in terms of digging into the prospects. I was like 13, I think, at that point. So that's kind of really when I got into it. And then obviously in the mid 2010s, when the Sixers were really bad and I still cared about that franchise, and there were so many high draft picks to kind of to get invested in, and most of them did not work out. But just quickly before we start talking about the guys at number 5, what did you make of the Austin Ainge introduction to Utah, and kind of how that maybe changes the offseason outlook for Utah?
Yeah, the timing is interesting, as I think you mentioned. It's June. The draft is a few weeks away at this point, so it's interesting to not only bring somebody in, but to bring them in such a prominent role in deciding the direction that this franchise is going to go in. But I was not surprised. I saw the name and I went, that one tracks.
Not hard to put the puzzle pieces together there. Yeah.
No. But I mean, obviously the Celtics have been one of the most well-built teams in pretty much every way, drafting, trades, free agency, acquisitions on the margins. So hopefully Austin and Danny can bring that to Utah. So there are some, it's not like a total, like there are some credentials there, but the timing of it was what kind of, I think, caught me and a lot of other people off guard. just an odd time to make a big change like that.
Yeah, and it seems like they're really leaning into this. They don't plan on tanking again next season. Now we'll see how that
Yeah.
goes. I mean, this past year was the only real year that they actually tanked. The previous 2 seasons,
Yeah.
they been, and this is something I talked about with Ben Anderson from KSL on a previous episode we did in the couple days after the lottery, that they had been kind of overachieving in the first half of the season. There was a year where Larry Markkinen won Most Improved Player, and then in the back half of the year, they did some pretty nefarious tanking towards the end. I think that was to get the Taylor Hendricks pick and the Cody Williams pick. This past season was the worst season in their franchise history. So I don't think the fans are too interested in doing that again. But when they see guys like Darren Peterson and AJ DeBanza and Cam Boozer, I think they'll get over that pretty quickly. But then again, who knows if being in the bottom 4 is going to be the way to go. It seems like teams 5 through 10 are going to win the lottery going forward. So we'll see how that works out this time next year. I think they'll still be at bottom. They'll probably have a top 5 pick if I had to guess going into next season. Or
if they trade Lauri Markkinen to the Lakers for Dalton Connect, they can have the number 1 pick. It's a lot easier.
Or Walker Kessler, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. If it's a lot easier to sell the we're not tanking thing at 0-0 in the West than it is at 10-33. So we'll see how long they make it. But they do. I mean, they are consistently a pretty tough out, especially at home early in the season, year after year, even in these years that they're bad. So I do buy it for 2 months, and then we'll reevaluate.
Yeah, it's always a reevaluation come Christmas for every team in the league. It's like, oh, we had an injury, or this didn't go the way we wanted to, and it's either firing the coach or
the 10 seed in the West is going to have 47 wins.
Yeah, not looking too appetizing. Can we move to the East? I don't know if you just Salt
Lake
City.
Yeah.
Unless that's happening, I don't know about even a play-in appearance next year for Utah. But obviously, the reason I wanted to have you on today was to talk about all the draft guys. We have 9 guys to get to here to talk about at number 5. I think really only 4 or 5 of them are realistic, but I think all of them are interesting in their own right because, like we've talked about now, like it'll be interesting to see what Utah does. There were rumors about them maybe trying to trade up. I don't know how realistic that is. If they wanted to move up to 3, I think Philly would be interested in doing that for sure, or moving back at this point. I mean, it feels like the consensus is at this point that the 3 through 8 to 9 range is all kind of the same level of tier of prospect. So it's all about if you find the guy you really like, and if you feel like you want to get a certain guy over a certain team, or worried about Charlotte taking your guy or Philly, whatever, that's the only reason you would trade up. Other than that, it feels like you're kind of getting the same level of guy, because the 2 guys we're not obviously going to talk about on this podcast are Cooper Flagg and Dylan Harper, because unless Utah moves up to 2 with San Antonio and tries to get Harper as the new face of the franchise guy, which I think would be a solid move from them depending on what the trade going to San Antonio would look like. But Flagg, obviously, we're not going to talk about. He's going to Dallas, and Harper right now is a clear number 2. But before we get into the guys that I have in order, we'll talk about here. Is there anybody that has crept up for you throughout the process that has gotten into? Obviously, I'm sure you're like me, and you have Flagg in a tier of his own at the top, and then Harper kind of in a tier of his own at number 2. Mm-hmm. Has anybody at all threatened that second tier to compete with Harper? Or you? Because I have a guy that I think has gotten close-ish to Harper. Yeah, I'm just not going to put him above Harper, but I think there's a clear third star bet in this class to me, and he's a guy we'll talk about a lot, but I have gotten close to putting it. I don't think the gap between him and Harper is as big as some other people do.
I don't have anybody that has threatened the Harper tier. That says more about how I feel about Harper. I have loved Harper.
Yeah, very
year.
fair. We've talked about him a lot throughout the season. Yeah.
I love Dylan Harper. I think he's going to be an awesome player. I think it shares a lot of similarities with a lot of the high volume scoring guards that have really emerged, like Brunson and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, that kind of
Cade Cunningham
too, player on the ball.
Yep. A little bit, yeah,
totally. So I mean, we don't need to get into the full prospect profile of him, but I do have guys that have risen up in that third tier below him But just because of how highly I rate Dylan Harper, I don't have anybody that I have really been willing to put next to him.
Yeah, that's fair. I totally get that, and even the guy that I have at 3, which I'll reveal once we talk about him, I don't have him. I just think the gap isn't as the gap is closer than it was maybe when I started the process.
Sure, yeah.
And I think there are 3 pretty clear star bets in the class with Flag, Harper, and the guy that I have at 3. And then there's a bunch of interesting guys. The first guy I want to talk about, because I'm gonna do this in order of kind of like the consensus big boards that I've been digging into throughout the last couple weeks. And the first guy is the guy that of this group feels the least likely to fall to 5. And that's VJ Edgecombe. So I've got some graphics here to go with each guy for VJ Edgecombe. Obviously, freshman guard from Baylor, 6'5". Obviously the heights are listed with shoes on, just kind of some projection there because for some reason they do the heights at the combine in bare feet for whatever reason. I don't know.
They don't play basketball bare feet.
That's been my whole point. So you're just kind of adding about an inch to an inch and a half, and I'm just kind of rounding up or down either way. But VJ Edgecombe, about 6'5", a little under 200 pounds, 19 years old, just an elite athlete, maybe the best athlete in the class. Some of his key strengths are on and off ball defense. I feel like he's a weapon in transition. He had an interesting season at Baylor. That team was, I think, preseason top 10. Didn't kind of live up to that. They ended up as an 8 or a 9 seed. They beat Mississippi State in the first round before they're getting pretty clearly whooped by Duke in the round of 32. But some of his weaknesses are the handle for sure. He's not a great finisher at the rim. And there'll be plenty of questions because of the handle about how much of a creator for himself and others he can be on the ball. So I have got a lot of thoughts on VJ Edgecombe, but I'll leave the floor to you to start about what you feel about VJ and where you have him maybe on your big board.
Well, he's a fun guy to watch a highlight tape of. That's for sure. I mean, he moves different to pretty much anyone else in this class, as you mentioned.
Yeah, that dunk he had on that poor Gonzaga bench warmer at the end.
It was
Gonzaga,
Marfu's kid.
Was it Marfu's son? I didn't remember.
Son.
But it was Baylor was getting blown out by
mean.
Gonzaga in an early season game, and VJ Edgecombe in transition just absolutely obliterated apparently Marfu's son. And that's like it's like always like the first highlight you see on any kind of VJ Edgecombe YouTube video. It's hilarious. But yeah, go ahead.
It was Marfu's son, yes.
Yeah.
So the shot creation is a real thing because the handle, he looks like his body is kind of moving too fast. Like the first thing in my notes with him is I want him to slow down like 3%.
Yeah.
I just want him to like not go at 110% speed all the time. And I do think that would help him. I think that would help him with his handle. I think that would help him just be less out of control like he is sometimes. And you see a lot of young, really hyper athletic guys that have a similar issue. He struggles to play off 2 feet sometimes, which is another thing that I think is something that happens with guys that are that athletic, is they're just jumping around everywhere. Offense, defense, they're always in the air. I do like the shot. I think that was kind of a question throughout the season, and I think near the end of the season, that really came along, especially as a spot up guy. The Baylor was horribly constructed as a roster last season, and I think that kind of hurt him. I wish he got more reps on the ball, but when you have 90 guards and one 6'7" center, that doesn't really work out all that well. But I do think I think he's a transition beast. Obviously, there was kind of some Christian Brown in there to me, and maybe this is just because I watch too much Christian Brown. But obviously he can outgrow that if he can get the creation and the handle under control. But I think right now, if he can come in and be a really solid defender, which, there's some growth there. He's kind of a gambler right now. He needs to, I think reps will help him on that end. But I think that the shot can be there. He can be at least a good off-ball player as a spacer and as a cutter. I do think he's okay going into the lane when he gets a running start, like coming off of curls and things like that. Just starting with the dribble himself is more where the problem is. But the upside is hard not to love, especially if you're on the plus side of the jumper like I am. I do have him at 3 overall on my big board. It was really close between him and another guy who I know that you like as well. But I do really like VJ.
Yeah, I have VJ at 4. But the thing I started with when I watched VJ was I wanted to go back and watch him with the Bahamian national team last summer, because I think that was
Yeah.
an interesting context with him playing alongside Buddy Hield and DeAndre Ayton, 2 veteran NBA guys who just kind of know what they're doing out there in a context like that. And you're seeing him in the context that he might have very early in his NBA career, where
Mhm.
he's just trying to find his way. And I thought he really flourished in that environment. I remember last summer watching some of the Olympic qualifiers, just as a basketball sicko, like I was interested in that kind of stuff, and he just really popped for me. So I think that context was important to go back and watch, and I do think it helps it project an early role for him as a role player. And there's a lot of guys in this class where I have questions about accepting the role, a certain kind of role, and I don't have that at all with VJ.
No, I don't either.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the points you made are exactly kind of how I feel. The handle is definitely a concern, and I think that is the swing skill
Yeah.
for him. Like, that is, if you believe in VJ as a really, really high star upside potential, which I'm not quite there, it's all about believing in the handle, because there are times where he got away with it in college games where he just, like you said, you just want him to slow down a little bit, because he'll slightly lose it, and it didn't punish him enough in college just because of the guys that he was being guarded by. But in an NBA context, that's going to be a lot tougher for him when he's getting into the lane and guys are really just trying to poke the ball away from you. It's just going to be a lot tougher. And I also think alongside with the handle, kind of goes hand in hand with his half court creation. I think that is also going to be something that makes or breaks how good he is, because I do think there is a certain floor there with him, with the athleticism that he has and the defensive prospects that I have, because I do really like his shot as well. Like you said, I think he can be a spacer. There were times this season where when he was in a groove and he was feeling it, he didn't need to be wide open on a catch and shoot.
No.
Like
Yeah.
this, I think the game at Cincinnati where he made like 5 or 6 threes in that game, he's like coming off pin downs. He's running along the baseline and coming off curl screens, and he's just kind of shooting it off the catch and doesn't even need to be fully set. So I think the shot is legit, and I kind of believe in it at the NBA level. It's just about, can he create his shot for himself, or is he going to be strictly a catch and shoot guy? And I think there are times where the creation flashes. Like, you watch the Duke game, there was a play late in that game where he kind of, it's just a basic top of the key ball screen. He spins past Proctor, and then he picks his dribble up quick enough that Malawach can't get it, and then just takes kind of one extra step and gets to a good angle and gets a layup. So I think there are times where he has shown the ability to keep the handle under control. It's just about, if you view him as a star bet, you're kind of betting on his handle progressing in a way you need, that he can be kind of a lead guy, which I don't see at this point, and I'm not sure if he ever gets there. But even still, I think he's got the floor to be a very solid starter in the league, even for a playoff team, like a third or fourth. I think even fifth starter would still be a good outcome for a guy like him. But I like I said at the top, this is the guy that I think of this group is the least likely to be there for Utah, because I think even if Philly doesn't take him at 30, which I think is probably the most likely outcome, if I'm guessing, based off of Daryl Morey, if they stay there at 3 and pick, I think VJ is his kind of player. But I mean, if somehow if he falls to 5, I think Utah, that would be just a really nice guy that you can count on as your core going forward, as part of your core going forward.
Yeah,
All
you
right.
nailed it with the handle. That's kind of where the difference between him being a hyper explosive Christian Brown and which is still a very good player, and better than that, is going to be the handle and the creation, like you mentioned.
All right, so we'll get to the next guy here, which obviously we have talked about a lot. The number 4 consensus guy here, according to most big boards, is Ace Bailey. This is probably the most interesting guy that we'll talk about because neither of us really like him all that much. I think I have Ace at 7 on my big board. I have him down at 5. There are certain things you can't have him lower than some of the other guys in this class.
Yeah.
Like you dive into the other guys and it's like, okay, well, Ace still has certain things. Yes, he makes tough shots, as you can see on the strengths I have here. Okay, so just going over the basics: 6'8" guy, the height. Shocker, he's not 6'10" like Rutgers had listed him at is the entire season. A little bit over 200 pounds, 18 years old. Almost 18 points a game, 53.6% true shooting. Obviously, a high usage rate. You can watch the highlights and you'll get a feel for that. Under 35% on threes, under about 4.5 a game. Is a pretty good rebounder, though. I'll give him that, and he does have the help side defensive potential. Obviously, I've got a lot of notes on Ace too, but I'll leave the floor open to you. Like I said, I've got Ace at 7 on my big board.
I also have him at 7 for the reasons that I was the same, where I had him lower than that, and then I was looking at it and I was like, well, I really can't have him below some of these guys because the high upside outcome is there.
Yeah.
It is a real thing, and he will get picked most likely higher than 7 because of that. But I just don't. Is there going to be a way for him to get easier shots? Because we know he can make tough shots, but even the best tough shot makers are making that's still an inefficient way to score. And he has never seen a tough shot that he doesn't like. You can get that from watching him or from
listening
some of his
to any
quotes,
of his interviews,
listening to anything he says. What did he say? Like, what might be a bad shot to you? Like, you don't practice it or something?
Yeah, he was basically saying he doesn't take bad shots. And I was like, buddy, I've watched the tape. I've seen you take some bad shots.
Well, he probably thinks that there are no bad shots for him, which I respect it. That's real hooper mentality. But I like the combination of the fact that I don't think he creates space all that well, and the fact that I don't think he really handled pressure very well, especially in conference play against some of these teams that really, the scouting report became, let's get up in him, and he will take these shots and he will turn it over a little bit and he will kind of get a little bit frantic. I do think that when he gets downhill, he is a decent passer, a better passer than I think I gave him credit for during the season. I think watching him back, but getting there is the hard part. Getting free from the pressure, kind of getting started. Needs to pick his spots a little bit better. That's obvious with the bad shot taking. But you mentioned the defense. I do like the defense, especially off the ball. He'll get stronger, and I think that on the ball he can be pretty solid. I do think his role is pretty interesting. I have this written down. What do you think is better for him? Would you rather him go to a team that's going to ask him to score a ton, or would you rather him, do you think it would be better for him to go to a team like, say, Philadelphia, where he is going to be more removed from your Philadelphia thoughts, but a team that would pigeonhole him a little bit and say, hey, can you do X, Y, and Z for us? And can you defend? And this is your shot diet, rather than going to somewhere like, I think maybe Utah would be like this, or like Charlotte or somewhere where they would be like, hey, you're going to be like the best scorer out here. Go get 20 a night. What do you think is better for him?
I think this is the make or break thing for him in his career, is where he starts. And I think it is absolutely 100% better for him to go to a better team. I think it was I think it was a real disservice to him that the teams that jumped up did. That Dallas and San Antonio and Philadelphia all jumped up, because I think any one of those 3 teams, if they're at 5, 6, 7, or even 3, 4, whatever, I think that would have been better for him, because I do think he needs to go to a situation where I think he needs to be humbled a little bit early in his career and go play and go sit in practice and watch, whether it's Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, Paul George, or Wembanyama, or Kyrie Irving, Anthony Davis, all these guys that are on these top 3 teams that I felt like the context would have been a little bit better for him. And just see these guys and maybe have him realize I'm not there yet on that level, because I think that's what he needs at this point in his basketball career. We've talked about the quotes from him, and I do see, and this is the reason I do have him at 7, because I actually don't really see the high upside, the high upside. Like, I don't see the Paul George level like outcome with him. I know Paul George is his favorite player, or Paul George loves Ace Bailey, is like, whatever. He's Paul George. Stop doing your podcast. Regardless, but like,
there we go. We go. I wanted one charged Sixers comment during this conversation,
but it's like, I think I don't see him getting there, and I think some people, whoever's in his ear, needs to stop telling him he's going to get there. Maybe he could someday, and I'm completely wrong about it, but I see him more as in the, and I've mentioned this kind of comp before, kind of offhandedly, but like, if you combined Michael Porter Jr. and Peyton Watson, I think that's kind of the archetype you should be going for. Now, granted, Michael Porter Jr.
do that? Can we do that?
Yeah, the Nuggets would love to do that. Yeah,
can we figure that out?
But Michael Porter Jr. is taller, obviously, but it'll be interesting to see where he lands and how that affects him, because I think that is the make or break thing for him. Because, like you said, yes, he makes tough shots, but that's all the shots he really creates for himself. Like, can he beat anyone off the dribble? Like, he wasn't really doing that against Iowa last year.
Yeah.
Like, he wasn't really creating easy looks for him, like you mentioned. But when he gets on a heater, it doesn't matter who's guarding him. Like, he's impossible to stop when he gets on a heater. You just didn't see that enough for me in that season at Rutgers. The defense, I think I do like his defensive upside, like you said as well, especially as a help guy. Although some of the help side defense and the blocks are because he fell asleep and he's recovering to make a play defensively. And I think that's where the athleticism shows up, because obviously he tested well at the combine, but some of the run and jump stuff at the combine doesn't always matter all that much. You can just watch the tape and see where the athleticism shows up, and it doesn't show up for him with his first step. Like, I don't think he's got a quick first step, and that's partly the biggest reason why he is a guy that doesn't create easy looks for himself, especially in the mid-range and getting to the rim. Because I do think he is a solid finisher when he gets to the rim. He just doesn't get there nearly enough. He really does need to get stronger in that regard if he wants to make any kind of impact away from the paint, because it like I said, it'll just be fascinating to see the kind of role that he has right away as a rookie, because I think if you do, like you said, pigeonhole him into this role where it's like, hit the open threes that come to you, maybe attack a closeout once or a couple times, during a game, and really commit yourself to being a good help defender and getting stronger throughout the season and learning how to be a good on-ball defender. I think all of that will be good for him, because I think it's about really limiting him early and then seeing if he can grow into something more, because I don't think you want to be just like, hey man, go have fun, let loose, let's see what you got. I think you want to limit him early and then let him prove that he can do that first, and then see if he can, improve out of and bust out of a role player mold into a star mold, which I don't see it, but I'm willing to admit that I could be wrong on that.
Yeah, the tools are there. The handle is pretty far away right now. That's really what's limiting him with like you mentioned, the paint.
He does look stiff when he has stiff when he has the ball. And that's why the 6'10" was believable during the season, because he looked like a guy that was 6'10" trying to dribble the ball, but then it's like, okay, you're actually 6'8". Like, it's, yeah.
Yeah, we're on the same page. I do see the upside if the handle comes along, but he is. And I do agree with you that going to a good team would be a lot better for him, where they can say, hey, this is what we need from you. And let's see him buy into that and really kind of start there and see where it grows.
Yeah, and I do think Utah is probably the floor for him. Like, I think he will probably go either 3, 4, or 5. I don't think he falls past Utah. And honestly, I don't think Utah is any worse of a situation than the teams behind, like Washington or New Orleans or Brooklyn.
No.
The teams, like, I actually think Utah could be better with a coach like Will Hardy, who I've talked about in this podcast. I really, really like a lot. And, part of the other thing with Ace too is, like, I have it on the weaknesses here on the graphic, the poor free throw shooting. Like, that was a game we were playing throughout the season. It was like, hey, what's Ace Bailey's free throw shooting numbers? At this point of the season, that was a game that we played a lot. And
that's the other.
It's all about, like, we're not in these meetings with him And as the teams are interviewing him, before and after the workouts they have with him. So that's like, we don't know that. But if I felt good about him buying into a role, that might change how I feel about him as well.
That's the other thing where I have him a little lower is if you say, "Hey, can you knock down these open threes?" Do we know that he's going to do that because he's a bad free throw shooter, like you mentioned. He's a pretty average 3-point shooter percentage wise. Now the difficult shot diet is a big part
There
of
were not a
that.
lot of open ones, that's for sure.
No, but it's just not something that he's really been asked to do. So there's not like I think that he could be a solid spot up shooter. Like I don't think he's going to be
I don't think he's
a
Michael Porter
guy
Jr. in
that
that regard either. That's the
no, no,
thing.
no,
Like,
no,
it's
no.
like
Yeah,
he's not there as a
that's
shooter yet either. Yeah.
exactly. That's kind of my point where it's like, what is that going to look like, and how much adjustment is that going to take for him?
All right, I think we did enough on Ace Bailey, so we'll move
Yeah.
on to the next guy here I have on the list is Tre Johnson, who from Texas, a freshman guard, 6'6", under 200 pounds, 19 years old. First things first, he's the best shooter in the class, and it's not really even
Yeah.
close. He is an elite shooter from everywhere, any angle, coming off screens, off the dribble, kind of going to his left, going to his right. He's just a ridiculous shooter. There are some passing flashes there that you saw throughout the season. Not a great context for Texas, as we talked about a lot off the pod. Obviously, Rodney Terry got fired after the season, despite them making the tournament. Just not a very well-constructed team, which is, spoiler alert, a theme with a lot of guys in college basketball, except for the Duke guys. That was a very well-constructed team. But everybody else that we'll talk about on this list is like, that it wasn't the best context for him in this situation. But some of the weaknesses for Tre, he does not get to the rim, and he does not get to the free throw line, which are some of the big things to point to if you are not a fan of his star upside, which I will spoil it now. He is number 3 for me.
Really? Okay.
He is the guy for me in this class.
Okay.
I really, really buy the star upside, but I do get the motor questions at times, especially on the rebounding category and on the defensive end as well. I just don't think he really enjoyed the team he played on last season, and I don't blame him. So a lot of the stuff I've read about him is he is a pretty crazy worker, an intense guy to be around. Obviously he led the SEC in scoring as a freshman, the best conference maybe in the history of college basketball that we've seen last season. He was doing it on 56, almost nearly 56% true shooting, a pretty high usage rate, shot the heck out of the ball. Like I said, positive assist to turnover ratio, did shoot the ball well at the rim, just didn't get there a ton, or not well. I think it wasn't terrible, but I think you would like more from him. So like I said, I have him at 3. I think he's pretty clearly the third best star bet in this class. And I think whether it's Philly at 3, Charlotte at 4, or Utah at 5, I think any one of these teams would be wise to bet on him and take him there.
Yeah, I like Tre. That makes 2 of us where I did not like watching the team that he was on last year either, other than watching him. So I'm with him there. I have him at 5. I don't necessarily disagree with you about him being a good star bet. I do think that the weaknesses are a bit of a bigger red flag for me. But I mean, this guy is just awesome to watch him hoop, man. He
is a real hooper.
He is a hooper. That is literally the first thing in my notes is he is a real hooper.
For the people who like Ace Bailey and think like he's the hooper prospect in this class, it's not. It's Tre Johnson. He is the hooper prospect. Yes.
Yeah. Sometimes when he starts, like was it the Arkansas game in the SEC tournament where he's just the craziest, or not in the SEC tournament, at the end of the regular season where he was
that the game where he scored 39?
Yeah, I think so. And he just starts shooting, and you think he's never going to miss a shot. He is an insane shooter, a great tough shot maker. He can create some space for himself. I like the pace that he plays with. I like his handle. I do think he's a good passer. He doesn't really do it a lot, but he made some really high-level passes, I thought, at times. Now, part of that might be that the Texas team around him was like, do I really want to give this ball to Tremont Mark with a 0% chance of getting it back?
Yeah, he just knew he wasn't getting it back. That's the thing,
yeah. So I do think that that's there, and that's untapped for him. But the rim pressure is a big thing for me. He's kind of a settler sometimes, almost especially when he gets going, he becomes more of a settler. Like he just starts. He
He
will
loves to
launch.
sidestep and get to his
Yes.
like he loves sidestepping,
Yes.
and it mostly to his right, but he does it in either direction
Yeah.
because like I do think he has a really good handle. He just doesn't use it to get downhill, which I think is untapped there. But I understand like the real thing you're betting against with him is the lack of the free throw rate for sure and getting to the rim, and then just the motor stuff defensively, which don't. I think in an NBA context, I think he'll be a little bit more bought in. So I believe in that. But
Sure.
obviously
Yeah.
I do get what you're saying. Like it's a star bet for me. Like I do
Sure.
see the Devin Booker level outcomes for him. I don't know if he's going to get to that point, but I do
Yeah.
see an all-star Bradley Beal kind of guy in there. And obviously,
There's
these
a
are not like one-to-one comps, but you know what I mean.
there's a lot of CJ McCollum when I watch him a
That's
little
fair.
bit that I kind of see.
CJ
And
was a
then
little bit better at getting to the rim at this point, even at this
yeah,
point of his
totally.
career. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, the motor thing is the other thing I have written down. I think that hurts him on the glass, as you have on the graphic. I think that hurts him a little bit defensively. I do think that it's totally fair to say that
It's also the
on an
wingspan
NBA
too. Like I
team,
think the
yeah,
6'10"
sure, the
wingspan, I
tools are
think
there.
helps with that as well.
So I do think that it's fair to say that maybe that gets better um, as he kind of gets into the league and is more bought in on a team that is hopefully more well put together than Texas was. But the rim pressure is really the big red flag for me, and the free throw rate. Also, I don't know if he can survive. Like that is a must for me. I think for him to really become the big time star that I think that you see more from him. I see him more likely as a number two or a number three, a volume scorer, but I'm not sure if he's because of the rim pressure questions. I'm not sure if I see the true like this guy is our number one scorer. I don't see those outcomes as being as likely with Tre.
I do think there is a high floor for him as well, with just
Sure,
because
yeah,
of the
totally.
shooting. I think is just there's no way he is a
Agreed.
bust. I think
Yeah.
with how good of a shooter he is. Like you, at the worst, I think he's a bench scorer and just kind of like a microwave Lou
Hmm.
Williams kind of guy. Like I just think the shooting is so special that I think he can't. I don't think he's going to fail. But I think he's a guy kind of like Ace, where the context matters, and I think he's a guy where you want to see him progress from a smaller role where you're really not asking him to do too much. You don't want him trying to push the needle early in his career. See if he can be a guy that comes off the bench, knocks down open shots, and creates for himself and taps into that a little bit more for himself, creating for himself and for others. And then, as his career progresses 3-4 years into it, bring him into the starting lineup and have him expand his role and see if he can handle more of that. Because I think it's not something I think is going to happen right away, but I do think throughout the progression of his career early on, like once he gets to 23, 24, he will be a guy that can be, the lead engine for an offense. I just think he's got that in him. And obviously, like I said, it depends, like we've both said, like it depends on how much he can improve at rim pressure and being more efficient once he gets there, and getting to the line, because as we've seen with all great players, they live at the line, and that's just something he did not do a ton of last year at Texas. So that'll be an early in the first two seasons of his career, an indicator of kind of how he's progressing in terms of the star level outcomes. But like I've said, I still think he's got a pretty high floor, just given the shooting. And I think if the Jazz do wind up
I
with
agree
him
with
at
that,
5,
yeah.
I think that would be a really, really great outcome for them.
I think, yeah, specifically to Utah, I think that he would be an awesome pick at 5. They really need some juice, like a number one scorer, and I think that would help Markkanen out too.
Yeah.
Not having to do so much on the ball stuff. I do think that Tre would give Utah something that they really need.
Yeah, it would be a nice guy to plug in alongside Colin Sexton, not Colin Sexton. I'm sorry, Isaiah Collier, who had a nice rookie year last year.
Yeah.
Filipowski had a pretty solid year. Cody Williams, as we talked about on this podcast, is still a work in progress. This will be a big summer for him to see what he looks like when he comes back next year. But I think Tre to plug in along those guys and kind of have those guys all being on the same ish timeline will be interesting. And like we've said many times, we'll see what the market and situation. What comes of that this summer. John Collins has a player option and could be moved as well. So we'll see what the roster even looks like. But I think Tre Johnson would be a great outcome for Utah if he's there at 5. So the next guy I will talk about is probably maybe my second favorite guy for like realistic guy for Utah, not counting in VJ, and that is Con Knipple. Obviously, Duke guard / wing, 6'6", 220 pounds, 19 years old. Another incredible catch and shoot guy. Doesn't do as much movement shooting as Tre is, but when he's set, his shot is money. And he is maybe one of the better guys off 2 feet in this class, I think for sure. Like he does, despite all of the things you'd expect for a white guy from Duke, like he does get into the paint efficiently, and he has a plan when he gets there.
Yeah.
And I think he's a really good finisher too. He's pretty crafty, and I think he's got some underrated playmaking abilities as well. Because when I watched Con, I really only wanted to watch the ACC tournament games without Flag, because obviously that's going to be the context he's going to be in the NBA, is not having Cooper Flag on his team. He's likely going to be on a team that is not as well constructed as that Duke team. I mean, just watching some of the games, I can't believe they didn't win the title. That team was.
It's hard to find a team that would be better constructed than that Duke team.
That Duke team was on last year. Yeah, the contact was great. Like it is interesting when you're comparing guys like Tre Johnson and Con Knipple. It's like if they reversed
guys.
Yeah, and if they reversed roles, like how would Tre Johnson have looked at Duke in Con Knipple's role, and vice versa? So that's always interesting as well. But Con shot over 40% from 3 last season, almost 65% true shooting, which is just awesome. Almost 93% of his threes were assisted, though, which shows you talk about the catch and shoot stuff and kind of the lack of creation for himself in that regard. He's a solid rebounder as well, and he did shoot well on 2s and did shoot well at the rim, like I said. But it's all about athleticism for him and how much of a disaster he could be defensively, both on and off the ball. That's going to be the make or break thing for him. I'm sure you agree there.
Yeah, totally. Where do you have him? Because
I have him at 5.
Okay, so I also have him at 5. You were first. I have him and Tre. Basically, I flip flopped them like.
5. Yeah, I have Tre at 3, VJ at 4, and Con at 5.
I have VJ at 4, or VJ at 3. Someone else at 4, Con at 5, and Tre Johnson at 6.
I'm interested to see you have at 4. This will be interesting.
Because you were first to Con before I really watched him, and I kind of, I list off all the guys, and I'm like, via the consensus, and you get down, I'm having that like 8, 9, whatever, and I watched him. I'm like, well, I kind of like him better than this guy, and I kind of
he's definitely that's a tier for me.
I like him better than this guy. Yeah,
it's a tier for me with Tre, VJ, and Connor in a tier, and I just have Tre. I have Tre at the top because I buy in the star bet, but those 3 guys for me are the third tier for me.
Tre's ceiling is probably higher for me too than Con's. This guy is freaking awesome on offense. I love watching him play offense. I love his pace. I love his feel for the floor. I love the way that I love his body control. I love the way that he uses his frame when he gets inside in the lane. It kind of reminds I'm a lot of comps, or especially with these top guys. He reminds me of Austin Reeves in the paint a little bit, just the way he kind of uses his body to create space for himself.
Not as athletic, but I see what you're saying.
No, the athleticism is not there, but when he gets into the lane, he reminds me of Austin Reeves. Getting there looks a little different. And
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And he's a good finisher when he creates that space for himself. He's got really nice touch, especially in that like 6 to 12 kind of foot range. I really like the way that he finishes in that area. I think he's a good passer, like you mentioned. I mean, you have it on here too. In the games where he was handling the ball a little bit more, I really liked him as a passer. I don't think he's like going to be a primary ball handler just because the shot creation is probably not there. But I think as a secondary guy, as a guard who
he had
he's going to
unreal
get
chemistry in the pick and roll with Malawach in those games.
totally.
Like he's a really good lob thrower. Yeah.
Yeah, he's going to get chances to attack second sides a ton, especially because people are going to be closing out on him so hard because of how good of a shooter he is. And I think that's really going to unlock him as kind of a passer, and with that finishing in that intermediate range, I think he's I just think he's a really, really good offensive player, even without the shot creation, which we'll see how it comes along. But he's just such a crafty player to me to go with being. I think for me, he's probably the best standstill shooter in the class. So obviously the athleticism is a problem. The defense is going to be interesting. I do think, like, I wrote this down. He looks like he's playing on defense. He looks like he's playing with himself in a video game, and he just can't, like, he knows where he needs to be, and he can't push all the buttons that fast. And he's just kind of like,
the screen navigation is a real issue for me.
Yeah, it's just he's just like a half a step behind. Like, I do think he's a smart player, and I do think I think he could be at least like not a complete negative in a team context because of that. But you're right, the foot speed is a big issue, and the athleticism is a big issue, and that is going to be kind of what maybe holds him back a little bit. But I do think that he's going to be such a good offensive player that I still feel fine putting him this high.
Yeah, I think he's so I think the first three guys we talked about are the most likely guys for Utah at 5. And then I think Con and this next guy that we'll talk about are the kind of the end of the realistic, most likely guys of a group of 5, if you would say. Group of 5 guys I think are most realistic. So the next guy I wanted to talk about, because I think Con would be an interesting fit for Utah as well, just as like a solid guy. He's not going to be your number one guy for sure, but he's just a solid guy that you have as part of your core, especially as like kind of Cody Williams insurance, as a guy that you feel pretty good about as being solid and part of the rotation. And part of the core moving forward, and a complementary piece to whoever you add, whether that's guys that are currently in the NBA or guys that they could be targeting next season. But the next guy I want to talk about, because I think he is really fascinating as a fit for Utah in particular,
totally.
Is Jeremiah Fears out of Oklahoma, who I really liked more and more. I watched him, which I think I didn't expect, really. Obviously, a freshman guard, one of the younger players in the class, still only 18 years old, because he reclassified last summer and went to Oklahoma a year early. 6'3", 180 pounds. Just the upside with him, he's probably got the highest upside outside of, I think, Tre and the top 2 guys, because there's just a lot of really big swing skills for him. I had this written down. The ability to get to the rim is just so special for a guy his age. Like that is where it starts with him. Like the shooting numbers, obviously I have him listed there, 28.4% on threes this year, under 4, just about 4 a game. And 60% of them were assisted. But he did really impress me in an interesting context in Oklahoma, not a great roster around him, carried them to an 8 or 9 seed to the 8-9 game. And he did it without really good shooting chops as well. And like I said, the rim pressure generation is really special. The handle is about as good as anybody in the class. You could argue maybe like Yakuchonis or even like Yegor. But I think it's really hard to speed him up, I should say. Like he always is playing under control, especially with the ball in his hands and facing a lot of the pressure that he did. And he's just kind of a go player. Like he could be a really fun guy. He's a fun guy to watch in transition as well. And I think if Utah falls in love with him, I wouldn't think that's a bad pick at all for them to go after Fears at 5, because I think in a context like Utah would allow him to grow a little bit too and work on the stuff which he does need to work on, because there is plenty of it. Like he is he's comfortable on the pull-up mid-range jumpers, and I think he shot those obviously a lot better than he shot on threes. And I think he might need to just start there as a guy and not take any threes unless they're kind of wide open off the catch, and try to build from the mid-range out as a jump shooter, because that's going to be the big swing skill for him. But right away, he's going to be a guy that puts pressure on the rim, and that's not really something Utah has a ton of. Like the Keontae George thing hasn't worked out all that well. Collier was solid at that as a rookie, but I think Fears is just a little bit more of a souped up version of Isaiah Collier, and I think he would be a really, really interesting option for Utah. And I forget where I have him exactly. I think I have him at 9 or 10 on my board overall. I think I have him at, or maybe I have him at 11. Actually, I have some of the other guys that I have a little bit higher faith in their roles kind of being more defined. But I have him at 11. But I do like him as a bet for Utah.
You have Fears at 11?
Yeah, I do have Fears at 11. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So as you were talking, I thought you were going to have him higher than that.
No, it's just I like him. It's just I don't know if I have the extreme confidence he's going to get to be the guy.
I agree.
That could be in there, as opposed to some of the other guys I do have there, which I'll get to at the end of this podcast. Before this is obviously going to end up being a two-parter, but I'm willing to eat it and be wrong about him. But I think I just feel more confident in the floor of some of the other guys, is why I have him at 11. But I do really, really see the upside with him.
Sure. Yeah. I do agree with you that I think he's a great bet for Utah. I would have him probably higher than, I have him at 9. I would probably have him higher than this for Utah. Like on the Utah specific big board.
My big board is just general. And to spoil it, I have Carter Bryant and Nick Clifford at 9 and 10 ahead of Jeremiah Fears. Just because I see those guys having translatable roles. Like I thought I
had them high.
So I have those guys at 9 and 10 just ahead. But in a Jazz only context, I would have Fears ahead of those guys.
Sure, totally. I love Fears. He is awesome to watch. Just lives in the paint. Go, like you said, go. Like he's just getting downhill at will, whether you want him to or not. He is getting downhill and he's getting into the lane. I want him to become an awesome finisher, because he would just be a monster. I mean, he's okay.
Yeah.
And I think he's such a young. He's 18, and I think he'll be 18 when the season starts, or I think it's around that time.
I think he's like 18 and a half right now. Yeah.
Yeah. But Oklahoma put so much on him. And he, like you mentioned, the roster was not awesome. He was like the UConn game in the tournament. They couldn't do anything that he wasn't creating for them. It felt like, which happens to a lot of people against UConn. But I do think he's another guy. The one I have with him, he's another guy that I do want to just slow down like a little bit. But I don't want him to lose kind of what makes him really special, which is the fact that he's always going to get into the paint. But he's just awesome as a ball handler, whether it's by himself, I think he's got really nice 2-man feel. The pull-up, I think, has some potential. Like he had some games where he would get going with the jumper. Obviously, the overall numbers are not awesome. That's not really his big strength. But you're right, the offensive upside with him, and I do think like defensively he will be okay. He's just a little bit on the smaller side, but
he's got decent instincts for sure.
Yeah, sure.
Ball.
Totally. But I think that especially for some of these teams like the Jazz who need paint touches, they need more pressure on the rim to kind of just open things up. He is a great bet. I do like I have it written down. What does he look like if someone isn't going to give him the keys right away? Like, I don't know what he looks like in a context where he doesn't have the ball as much as he did at Oklahoma.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
Because like all of his translatable skills are with the ball. All of his high level translatable skills are with the ball, and they are great skills. That's why I have him in the top 10. But that's really my biggest question with him, especially with the shot being a question mark at the moment. But Yeah, his ability to get in the paint is a rare trait that I think is absolutely worth a bet near the top of this draft.
Yeah, he benefited weirdly maybe from some of those teams falling. Like, I don't know
Yeah,
if Washington is the right context or New Orleans, but Brooklyn I think would be an interesting context, and same thing for
that's my
Toronto.
favorite spot for him.
Toronto would be interesting too. I think if you don't, I'm not the biggest quickly guy in terms of him as a starting point guard in the league.
Yeah, like a lead guard.
Yeah, I think
Agreed.
Fears would be interesting in that context as well. Brooklyn, I think I agree with you. Is probably my favorite context for Fears, and then Utah maybe would be number 2. But yeah, he's a fascinating guy to see how the first couple years of his career go and kind of the role he has right away will be interesting. So spend a little bit less time on the last 4 guys here because I think these guys are not really as realistic for Utah, but are worth talking about. I think at 5. And the first guy I wanted to bring up was Kaman Malawach, obviously the big guy from Duke's, legit 7'2" in shoes, over 250 pounds. He's still only 18 years old, and he's only been playing the game for a couple of years. He is just the ideal rim running big. He is the best play finisher in the class by far, and I think he's got real like elite level defensive upside. Like I have DPOY potential on here on the graphic. I think that's real. And obviously last year you saw how he fit into the context at Duke, and you see how willing he is to buy into a specific role that they give him. Now there are obviously some downsides there. I actually had Malawach higher at earlier in the process when I felt like there was some untapped star potential there with him, particularly offensively, just kind of doing more. But I think there's a long way to go for him to get there at this point. I still think he's a guy that could stretch out to the perimeter and knock down open catch and shoot threes at a decent rate in the low 30s. I think that's all you're kind of looking for. But him kind of making any kind of plays with the ball in his hands, I think is a long way to go and a bit of a stretch at this point. But I think he's kind of an instant plug and play guy, like the JaVale McGee kind of context, Tyson Chandler, those kind of archetype of players. I think he's got to get in better shape, I think, as well. Still needs to add some strength to his frame. Like he only played a little bit over 21 minutes a game for Duke last year. So there's a lot he needs to work on. But I think the fact that he's only been playing the game for a couple of years and the framework he's got already is really something you can build upon. And I think you can slot him in as a 10-year starter, I think, in the league for sure.
I have him at 4.
Nice. There you go.
4.
I thought it might be another guy the guy we'll talk about next, but
no, but I have him up there too. I had to control myself with I think that guy that you're talking about. I couldn't go that high though. Look, Malawach started playing when he was 14, I think, right?
Yes, yeah.
He's gotten so much better. That's usually a pretty good bet. I feel like these guys that improve really quickly, who start
Joel
playing
Embiid
late,
was that kind of guy.
That's the poster child for it. Is Embiid.
Now Joel in that year at Kansas was a special offensive player, and
totally.
Did so
no,
much
this is not a. This is not a Joel Embiid.
Yeah, I got what you're saying. Yeah, I was just providing the context there. Yeah,
the bet of improvement. Now I do agree with you that I'm not sure that him creating with the ball is probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
But I am betting on the shot is more why I have him at 4. He was a 76% free throw shooter on not like I think he shot like 2 a game, which is not a ton, and he's got pretty good touch from the outside. I feel like he's got pretty good touch around the rim. I think that Duke didn't ask him to shoot ever, which Duke did not need to change anything about what they were doing. They were doing fine until about 2 minutes left in the season.
I was gonna say the last 4 minutes of the last 4 minutes.
They did fine for months and months and months, and then Kelvin Sampson happened, and that's how it be. But he's an awesome play finisher. He's a great roller, like you mentioned. I mean, he's a good athlete. He's a great lob threat. He is going to be useful just off of that. I think he's awesome on defense, like you have on here. Like his floor to me is so high, and then his ceiling will be determined obviously by the shot, and that he just causes so much chaos defense. He's a chaos machine on defense, and at 7'2" with his frame, I think that that's going to be so valuable for teams as a guy who can protect the rim, and he can. I mean, he's not like he's not going to be the best switch defender in the league, but Duke had him all over the place, switching,
Yeah.
hedging. I think that a lot is made of the rebounding numbers, which aren't awesome. I think that Duke having him out on the perimeter so much has a little bit to do with that. Obviously, he infamously did not have a rebound against Houston, which
they also
Houston's,
wanted Flagg to be the guy who was the main defensive rebounder because they want him to push the ball in transition as well. So that was kind of the context there. But I agree with you on the defense. And he's just a guy that guys just as the year went on and you would watch him, if you would watch a game from December and then watch a game from February, you would just see how different it was when guys would drive into the paint at him. They would be like, nope, I'm just not doing that. They would just completely like turn around and do something different in February as opposed to December. Like he got that reputation really quickly.
And he's a good offensive rebounder, which is that's why I have more optimism that the defensive rebounding will come along in a scheme that doesn't have him on the 3-point line so much.
Yeah.
Defensively. So I really like the lack of creation limits him being like a true number one player, obviously, but I see very few worlds where he is not like you mentioned, he is not a solid starter. And then I think with the shot coming along and him putting on some more weight and just, his feel for the game is going to keep improving so quickly, like we saw last season, like you just mentioned, because he started playing so late. And I think that unlocks a lot of upside for him. And that's why I have him so high. That's why I'm so high on him.
I have him at 6. So I'm very high on him. There were times during the year maybe where I had him at 3 because maybe I believed in a little bit more of the offensive creation stuff. But I have him at 6, and I think he's the top of that next tier for me after Tre, Con, and VJ. So 3 more guys I want to talk about for number 5. The first guy is the guy I did think you were going to have at 4, and the guy who I do not have that high, and that is Derek Queen from Maryland. He's he's 6'10", almost 250 pounds. He is he's probably the oldest freshman in the class. Like he's going to be 21, I think, very early next season. The strengths for him, you can run the offense through him. That is for dang sure. He's great off the dribble. The playmaking, there are signs of the playmaking. It was ironic to hear the Baby Jokic comps from a guy who averaged under 2 assists per game last season, but he is a very willing passer, and he likes to make flashy passes. And I think he does a good job at limiting the turnovers at times. And he's just really, really confident as a driver. Like you would see as the season went on, teams would really try to get up in his grill and try to disrupt him at the top of the key, even beyond the 3-point line, just to try to make him get the ball out of his hands because they didn't want him operating the offense because he was so good at it for Maryland last year. And even then, he was able to get by good defenders and use his handle, which is really, really good for his size, and get to the rim where he's just a really good finisher, like I said. I just really question how it's going to look in the NBA. Against NBA defenses. And that's why I forget where I have him. I think I have him down at like 12 or something like that. I don't have him in the top 10, but there's another big guy that we'll talk about that I like a little bit more than him. But I do see the upside with him. Like if you're betting on the upside and him being a guy that can be a primary or secondary initiator offensively. And that's part of my other concern too, is like, if he's not that, what does he look like in the NBA if he's not a guy you feel like you can run your offense through? So I think you're a little bit higher on him than I am, but what stands out to you about Derek?
Yeah, I have him at 8, and I had him at 7 for a while, and moving him below Ace Bailey was the most painful thing that I had to do on my big board. That made me sad. I really like him offensively. Obviously, I mean that is the strength. I think that the assist number overshadows how good of a passer I actually think he is. I think he's
I agree with that. Yeah.
Passer and playmaker. The jumper is obviously a concern, but he gained confidence in it at the end of the year. The release is way too slow.
It's a weird
right
angle
now.
too. Yeah.
It's a weird release, and it's way too slow, but I do think that he can get better at it as
Hey, he
as
made
he
two
kind of
threes right in front of me in the CSU game.
yeah,
The one at the first play of the game where he hit that three against Colorado State
yeah.
was literally right in front of my face. So,
And
yeah,
he's
yeah,
yeah, he's another guy. He shoots like 77% from the foul line, so that's
uh-huh.
a good indicator that I think that his range can expand as he gets more reps in the NBA. He's got awesome touch. His touch around the
Yes,
basket is so good. His handle is good enough to get to the basket. I think that he uses it really, really well, especially when he's working in kind of the mid post um, areas. He's really good at one dribble, two dribble. Let me get to this little. I mean, the buzzer beater against CSU
yeah.
is a pretty good example of him just getting to a spot and making a tough shot around the basket. So I think he's going to be a plus finisher. I think he gets to the rim. The fit is totally a big question, especially defensively. It's going to be a problem because he measured at what, like 6'9"? I didn't write it down. Six nine
He's
and
6'10" in shoes, but he's
yeah,
probably going to
yeah,
have
yeah,
to be a
totally.
4 in the
Yeah.
NBA. Yeah,
So ironically, he kind of reminds me of Jokic on defense a little bit because I do think he has decent hands.
yeah, he does have good hands. Yeah,
He's got good hands, but if you get him around the rim, you will get your 2 points, and
I
you
actually think he does stand up well on the perimeter too. Like I think he does
totally
compete a
yeah,
little bit more. Like that's why I think he just is a 4 in the
yeah,
NBA.
sure.
Yeah.
I can see that. Yeah, that's why he reminds me of the baby Jokic. Kind of shows up on defense because it's like on the perimeter, he'll his hands. He'll poke the ball out. He'll kind of move his feet a little bit, but if he's around, if you're coming at him and he's standing still under the basket,
It's 2 points, yeah.
you're going to score. So that's a problem, and that I think that your point about him being a 4 was another like a good um, because he can't protect the rim. So I think that he would be better as a 4 defensively.
And a lot of
Um,
his blocks last season came as like a help side defender because Maryland did have Julian Reese, who was a really, really good interior defender last year that
yeah,
he could play
and a total
alongside.
non.
Yeah, and was like like a non. He was like your a 4, but he
He's
didn't
an
shoot. It was
interior
yeah,
player. Yeah, it was weird because Queen was the 5, but he played more like
a
the
4.
4,
Yeah,
and Julian Reese played more like a small 5.
yeah.
Um, but I mean I like Derek Queen offensively. I think that inside 15 feet, I think that he has a chance to be really, really good. Especially combining his handle and his ability to finish around the rim with him being an interior passer. Um, that's the biggest reason that him and Julian Reese worked was because Derek Queen is such a good passer inside of 15 to 18 feet, and I think that that really can translate. So I like he could go to a bad team or a team that with a bad fit and not look very good, but if he ends up in the right spot, I am really high on what he can be as an offensive hub, like you mentioned.
I actually do think he is interesting for Utah in particular because I think this is
Sure.
something Ben Anderson and I talked about a couple weeks ago too. Was that if you just think he's better than Filipowski, he could just be the new Filipowski
Yeah.
and Filipowski could be the bench 4 and Queen could be the starting 4. I think because I think alongside a guy like Walker Kessler, I think that is a context that helps him if they keep Walker Kessler. Like I think a really a 5 like that is really good at protecting the paint, so he doesn't have to worry about that. And if somebody doesn't you don't have to worry about offensively, maybe a guy that can stretch out a little bit would be better for him. But Queen is able to play far away from the basket. I feel like so I don't think that's going to be much of an issue. But
Mm-hmm.
he's the last guy I think that we'll talk about that I think is really interesting for Utah if they were in love with him. I'm just not there with him yet. But I like I said, I do think the fit is important for him, and I do see some of the upside. I just have the questions about the athletic testing was really bad, and even though I have said on this podcast I don't want to buy into it too much when it's as bad as it was for Queen, sometimes that is not a great indicator. But he can still grow into a more polished body and get stronger and more athletic a little bit. So I'm not totally down on him, but he's one of those guys that if he doesn't pop early as a guy that looks like you could build an offense around him, I worry about what the next stage of his career could look like after
That I agree with.
first
The
contract.
the floor in a bad context would be lower than a lot of the guys I have around him on this board. But I can't not love a guy that they call Baby Jokic. Come on, what do we?
Yeah. It was a given that you'd have him in the top 10 for sure. The last two guys that we will talk about for Utah here at number 5 is first guy I just don't really see them being in love with, but you never know. And I want to kind of cover all the bases, and that's Kasparas Jakučionis from Illinois, a Lithuanian guard. Really kind of a point forward kind of a guy. Point wing, I guess you could say. He's 6'6". He's over 200 pounds, 19 years old. Just like a really, really good playmaker. It might be the best passer in the class. Got a great feel for the game, as I've got mentioned here. And I think the size and his strengths should translate. Like, I think he's really good at creating for himself and others inside the 3-point line. I really, in kind of the same way that Khan plays off 2 feet when he gets into the paint. Like, I think Jakučionis does that similarly. It'll be interesting to see how some of the athleticism translates on the other end of the floor. And it's all about the jumper for him. Like, he shot, under 33% from 3 this year on a little under 5 attempts per game. I just didn't love the form he's got there. And I'm not sure if he's a guy, and most of it felt like a lot of his makes were coming off catch and shoot. So it wasn't really creating for himself from 3-point range, off the dribble. So that's interesting as well for a guy who needs the ball in his hands a lot as well. So that's part of the same reason I was a little bit down on Queen was, what does he look like if he's not, if you're not running the offense through him? Although you can kind of, for guards, it's a little bit easier because you could just kind of slot those guys in more as a bench guard, kind of like a Spencer Dinwiddie type, as like a taller guard who can kind of come in and run the second unit. So that's kind of where I feel like his most likely outcome is, but I'm not as high on him. I think I have him at 13 or 14 on my board. But what do you like about Jakučionis?
I mean, you mentioned the passing is hard not to like, although he's kind of sloppy sometimes. Like, his turnovers are way up. But he is a really good passer. And that's, I think, going to be the A skill for him. I just don't see outside of that. I am just not sure. Like, I have him at 17.
Yeah.
I have him
at 13. Yeah.
Like, the shot is kind of like you mentioned, he doesn't really create it for himself. And even off the dribble, the efficiency is not awesome. I don't love his ability to get paint touches either. So then I'm kind of like, all right, well, where is the offense coming from? Like, what I'm trying not to just pin the Josh Giddey comparison on him and like as just like a passing, almost like a big pass first guard, but I don't think there's really a swing skill there as a scorer. And the defense is going to be tough, especially at first. We'll see if it comes along. I do think that the size is good and his frame is pretty good. That will help him on that end. But the foot speed is going to make him a target. So I see him as a good playmaker, especially like you mentioned, if he's running with a second unit. I think that he can be a good setup man in that role, but I don't know that I see the upside because I just don't. There's nothing that I can pin with him as a scorer where I'm like, all right, or like as a creator overall, where I'm like, all right, this is where I can see him kind of growing into a big role rather than just kind of a secondary playmaker kind of role, but without a reliable shot and without being a plus defender. I don't really know how far that gets you.
Yeah, that's all totally fair, and I really don't see him much as an option at 5 for Utah. But I just wanted to cover all the bases. And the last guy I wanted to talk about at number 5 is a guy who I really like, and I have him at 8 on my big board.
Interesting.
And that is Collin Murray-Boyles from South Carolina. He is an incredible defender. He is so fun to watch on defense.
Yeah.
He's probably the most versatile defender in the class. And that's why I have the picture of him with the graphic as him getting a deflection or a steal. I thought that was just really appropriate for Collin Murray-Boyles. He's a sophomore, but he is still younger than Derek Queen. So he's a forward. He's 6'8", 240 pounds. He's gonna turn 21 at some point in his rookie season. Like I said, he's a sophomore out of South Carolina. He is an incredible guy going to the rim. Like I said, he's a versatile defender. He's really, really good off the ball. And he does create for himself and for other guys as well. But it's all about the threes for him. Can he shoot the ball from 30 at all? He shot 26% from 3 this season. All of them were assisted. He did not take, or he only took 5 threes as a freshman and did not make any of them. This year, he obviously wanted to show that was an increased part of his game. I don't hate the form. Like, I think there's something to work with there in terms of his jumper.
And he was a confident shooter too.
Yes.
Like he like when the ball swung to him and he was open, he let it go.
Yeah, I'm really not gonna do the Draymond comp thing because that is very
the
obvious.
First thing in my notes is stop with the Draymond.
Yes.
Stop doing the Draymond.
Because that is just such an unfair bar to set for a guy who's 20 years old. Like, you can see it when you watch him, like, as a 6'8" guy who creates havoc on defense, and is good going to the rim and doesn't really do much on the perimeter. I really, really think he's got a high floor to be an impact player defensively. And I think even if the 3 doesn't come around, he's going to be a guy that you can bring off the bench to do a little bit of the Ben Simmons impression, a little bit where he's playing really, really good. The peak Ben Simmons not the Clippers Ben Simmons or the Nets Ben Simmons.
Open the vault, people. Go back.
Go back to 2019 and watch.
It was there once upon a time.
And like the way he goes to the rim and finishes, I think that's all in there. He's just not 6'10" like Ben Simmons was, or the same level of athlete. But I think even if the 3-point shot doesn't come around and he becomes a guy that you could really lean on in your starting lineup as a 4, he's going to need to play next to like a stretch 5. That is for sure. But just digging into this class, I didn't find enough guys that I liked. And Murray-Boyles' defense is just going to translate. I really, really feel good about it. And that's why I have him at 8. And I wouldn't begrudge Utah if they really fell in love with him and wanted to take him at 5, because I do think he's going to be an awesome team defender. And I think he's a guy you're going to plug in. And if you play alongside a guy like Markkanen, that would be fun as well. I just don't think he's as good as Draymond that you're going to be like, oh, he's just going to be a small ball 5. Like, I think it's going to be a work in progress and trying to find the right guy to play alongside him. But I do think there still is a floor there with how good he is defensively.
Sure. Yeah, totally. I'm.
He's just selfishly a guy I want to talk about, to be honest. Like,
oh yeah, I'm cool with that. I have him at 13, but I have like 10 through 14. I could have them in any order, and I really wouldn't mind. So I really like him too. You nailed it with the defense. He's going to be an awesome defender. He's all over the place. He flies around. He's a great team defender. Like, if you watch like some of the blocks that he has, he's almost a lot of them are just being a team defender, defender, helping out on a team that was not super awesome.
No, they were not good. No,
not great. Yeah, the Draymond, the first thing I have is stop with the Draymond, because like, I know Draymond is a meme in 2025, but let's not forget that Draymond is a rare defender. Like,
he's a rare human being, that's for sure.
Well, yes, but rare defender in all of the positive ways. Interestingly, I also wrote that I could see him more in the Draymond role on offense, because I think he's a good passer.
Yeah,
I think he's a good passer. Like, him I could see him running all of those 4-on-3s. He's a pretty good lob thrower.
Yeah.
But like, his passing from the elbows and like from the foul line area, I thought was pretty good.
It's a lot of basic reads, but he understands he's smart enough as a player to recognize when a double is coming, and he makes the basic read and he makes accurate passes.
He, as a passer, he doesn't miss advantages. Like, if they have a 3-on-2 or a 4-on-3, the ball is going to the right spot. pretty much all the time. And I think as a guy who is probably going to be a 4 I mean, we'll see about the small ball 5 stuff. That's always a thing with this. Anyone with this build is going to be, small ball 5, but he's going to get a lot of opportunities as a roller. We'll see about the offense, about the scoring. I think he took like 80-something% of his shots were at the basket. And a lot of those were post-ups, which he is good at, but he's also like not – he's 6 – like I think without shoes, he was 6'6" and change. So he's not going to get 10 post-ups a night at that size.
Yeah, I don't see that. I don't see the post-up being part of his game at the next level now.
I do think he's good at it, and like it makes him in the 2-man game. Like, I don't think you can just throw a small guard on him, like switch a small guard onto him. Like, I think he will bury that, which is a plus. But in like against matchups, like against 4s, I'm not sure. I'm with you there. I'm not sure that the post up will be a big part of his game, but I do like the playmaking offensively. As a secondary guy, obviously, and I'm with you that the defense makes his floor really high, and that's why I like him as well.
All right, we'll wrap up this episode today. I will reveal my full big board here. Obviously, I have Cooper Flag. I hinted at almost all of this throughout the podcast, but Flag at 1 in interior zone, Harper at 2 in interior zone, and then my next tier would be actually 3 through 6 with Tre, VJ, Khan, and Malawach, and I have Tre, as I mentioned, as the best star bet of that group. Then I have Ace Bailey in a tier of his own, then Collin Murray-Boyles, Carter Bryant, and Nick Clifford in their own tier, and then I have that 11 through 14, or 11 through 13 as their own tier, and then you've got Cedric Coward, Thomas Sorber, Danny Wolf, Yaxel Lendenborg, I think, and you could even put Walter Clayton in there as well. All interesting guys for kind of teams that are ready to win now and not at all, and a lot of kind of bench guys, and you're projecting it in that regard. It's just going to be an interesting cycle here with all the guys that are going back to school. It's really, really hurting the back end of the first round and the second round, especially. We didn't hit on really any of the foreign guys because I really haven't dug into them enough to be honest. I plan to do that over the next couple of weeks as the draft gets closer. But anything you wanted to comment here or that stands out to you about my board here before we wrap up this part?
Well, a lot of my takes are going to be on the next guys that we're talking about on the next pod, so I don't want to spoil them. I do love the Carter Bryant. I'm stunned that I am the lower of the two on Carter Bryant and Nick Clifford because I thought I was way up there.
I just think those guys it's so easy to see what they're going to be.
I agree with you. I'm sure we'll talk about them. I'm with you.
I still can't quit Jace Richardson. I can't do it. And we'll talk about him as well at 21.
Oh gosh, yeah, I love Jace, but like, I'm in a similar range with you. Where is Respect? I'm on the Respect Ryan Kalkbrenner.
He could be any of the Maxine Reyno. You could put him with Reyno, or you could swap him out for YKN, my guy.
I have Ryan Kalkbrenner at 24.
I like Kalkbrenner. I do like Kalkbrenner. You could put him where Adu Thiero is too, any of those spots. I think he's going to be a back end of the first round guy, and I think he could maybe be a starting big in the NBA. I don't know if I see it, but I think he's going to be a guy that's 6th round for 6, 7, 8 years.
Can he be a Nugget?
That they don't have any picks, but yeah, sure.
All right. We'll talk about a lot of these guys.
Yeah. So that'll do it for this episode of the podcast. Thanks everybody for listening, and thanks to Troy for coming on. Make sure to subscribe to the channel on Spotify or Apple, or if you prefer to watch on YouTube, subscribe to my channel there, and make sure to like and comment. All that kind of stuff is super appreciated. So full breakdown of all the Jazz options at number 5 today, even some that probably aren't really realistic, but I think a lot of interesting conversation between Troy and I about all of the really, really intriguing possibilities for Utah at number 5. So thanks everybody for listening, and enjoy the finals. And basketball's wrapping up, but we're getting to draft season, so enjoy all of it, everyone.